using the magic wand to select objects. The magic wand tool. It's located over here in the toolbox, and depending on how you have your tools arranged, it's going to be located under the quick selection tool, magic wand tool. The magic wand tool chooses pixels that are similar in color to the ones where you first clicked. So it selects the color range of an area or an object. This was one of the early tools in Photoshop. This was really the main tool before we were introduced to the quick selection tool. So this is the kind of old-fashioned way that we used to do all of our selections. The magic wand tool, like I mentioned, it works with ranges of color. And we have specific options or settings that we can change up here in the options bar. Now, by default, typically your tolerance is set to 32. So your options bar probably looks something like this at this moment. I'm going to go ahead and click on the red broomstick here. And notice what happens. An area of color, depending on where I click, becomes selected. Let's click on the tree frog. Okay, so you notice that not all of the greens are being selected, but it's kind of, it's getting there. It's close. So let's play with our settings that we have. The magic wand tool, the main setting up here is tolerance. So think of how tolerant are you? It's the range when sampling color. If we have a lower tolerance, we can go all the way down to 1. That means I'm less tolerant on the amount of colors that's going to be selected. So if I click on the red right here now, in this case, I actually got at least a few pixels. Sometimes you'll get just 1 pixel because all of the pixels around it are varying to some degree, and so I'm only tolerant 1 from the pixel that I clicked on, that pixel color. The higher the tolerance, obviously, the more tolerant I will be. So now if I click, I get just about all of the red. Let me click once more with 255. I get everything. We do get this message if you try to go above 255. The max value for tolerance is between 0 and 255. And that is because think of how our color modes go. We're in an 8-bit color, 0 to 256 for each channel. It's just the way that our graphic is built and Photoshop is built. All right, so standard, default around 32, but you notice that when I did go to 100 here, I got in this case, I got more than I wanted. And you can just do a click again to deselect instead of doing the Control D. Okay, let's see if we can get, so this is a bit too much, so we'll have to bring our tolerance down. Now the next options that we have here, I'm going to do a Command or Control D to deselect. We have anti-alias. Remember, that's what smooths out our selection. If you have that unchecked, you're going to get a very stair-stepped, very ragged selection. So we do want to try to smooth that edge. It just makes it look a little bit nicer. Contiguous. This means that my pixel colors are going to be either connected or not. So if I bring my tolerance down to about, let's go to 10. Okay, and I'm pressing Tab to apply and go to my next option here. If I uncheck this, let's just zoom in a bit and look at our tree frog here. So if I click on an area of darker green right here, all of those areas of darker green are selected. Okay, if I choose to turn this option on, I'm going to deselect. Only the pixels that are touching are going to be selected. So it basically, by unchecking it, that means that any color within my entire document that's within that range will be selected. So if you're trying to select just an object, like I'm trying to select just the tree frog, I probably want to keep this setting turned on because I don't want greens that occur somewhere else in the document, maybe back here for instance. Okay, so let's check this off and see if we can't get any of those over there. Do you see how I click over here in my background, which happens to be some grass back there, and part of my tree frog becomes selected when this is turned off. Turn it back on, do a Control D to deselect. Now click back here. Only this area is selected, nothing in the frog. Okay, so typically you're going to have this setting stay checked. The sample all layers does exactly that. It samples all of the layers. So if I have multiple layers, a composite image with multiple layers, and I have this green on more than just layer, on some additional layers, it will select that color on all layers. Okay, going back over here, we have point size, the sample size. This determines the number of pixels of color that it's going to pick up. So when I click on one specific pixel, I'm sampling that specific area. Now in older versions of Photoshop, we didn't have a chance to select this here because the magic wand is related to the eyedropper. We would always go to the eyedropper tool and select our sample size, and you can see actually if I bring this 3x3, then go back to my magic wand, see how it changed 3x3? So they're linked, they work together. What does this mean though? So a point sample size is 1 pixel. So if I zoom in close enough here to see my pixels, and here they are. If I click on this specific pencil, let's go have a tolerance of just 1 or even 0 we could do. And I click right here. All right, so I'm getting a few pixels selected, but it's looking exactly at my pixels that I'm clicking on. Now, if I bring this up to a 3x3 average, it's going to look at 3 pixels by 3 pixels, which ends up being 9 pixels. And see how I get so much more selected. So let's go back and just pinpoint. I'm going to deselect, Control D. I'm going to click on this darker pixel right here. We'll zoom in just a bit more so you can see, using my space bar to move this over. I'm going to target this pixel. Okay, so I get a little bit of an area. Let's do a 3x3, Control D, and select that same. Look how much more I get because it's looking at 9 pixels as an average and choosing those colors. And you'll notice, I'll Control D and go even higher. 5x5 average would be a total of 25 pixels. Get a bit more. And if I keep going on up to 100 by 100, I get so much I have to zoom out to see what's going on. And actually it took most all of my little guy here, my tree frog, most all of it. Even though my tolerance was set very low, because that average size was so big, it looked at 25 pixels from that place that I clicked, and it took that into consideration for determining which colors to pick up. Okay, now we do have some modifier keys. I'm going to turn this back to point sample. That's typically where I like to leave it. So, and I'll increase my tolerance by about 10 here. So we have modifier keys. If I hold down the Shift key, and this works with any selection tool, Shift adds to the selection. Notice how my cursor, I get a plus sign here. Can you see the plus sign? I'll turn my Shift off. I have my magic wand icon. I turn Shift on, or press Shift, I get a plus, so that means I can add to. So while keeping the current active selection, I can add more to it. If I hold down the Alt key or the Option key, I get a minus or subtract from selection. You might also notice up here, up in the upper left, see how my icons are changing. That's with the Alt key. This is with the Shift key. Okay, so the Alt or Option key subtracts from. You can see how I'm taking this away. So this part is not selected. Around it is selected. A little bit difficult sometimes when you've got these really crazy types of selections. So up here in that top left, we have some icons that indicate what we're going to get. So we have a new selection, we have add to selection, subtract from selection, and intersect with selection. So this deals with how what I'm going to be adding or what I click, what we'll do with an existing selection that's already there. So if I do a subtract and I click, this gets taken away. If I do a plus, it gets added back on. You can see it's kind of difficult with these types of pixels when you get little ones like that. In fact, the way to solve this, the little itty bitty pixels, the little, looks like little blinking, dazzling lights in there, but that's just about one pixel that's selected, that's not selected. I'm going to use my lasso tool, hold down the shift key again, I'm adding to, and do a big, huge surround to try to get all of those little ones, and now that's all selected. So this is where you really start learning to combine multiple tools and have them work together for you. So Magic Wand, one of the standards that's been with Photoshop for quite a long time, it allows us to choose pixels that are similar in color to the ones that we just clicked on. So it's a selection by color tool.